You spend billions. You build one of the fastest bombers ever made. It flies supersonic, it hugs the ground like a shadow, it can punch through any air defense on Earth, and then, before it ever drops a single bomb in combat, you cancel it. Not because it failed, not because it was slow, you cancel it in an office, with a pen, during a budget meeting. Sounds insane, right? So why would the most powerful military in history kill its own billion-dollar bomber? That is exactly what America did with the B-1. And the story does not end there. Right now, in 2026, B-1B Lancers are parked at RAF Fairford in England, armed, fueled, and flying deep into Iranian territory under Operation Epic Fury. A bomber canceled in 1977 is fighting America's wars in 2026. So how does a dead aircraft come back and end up being the most trusted bomber in the fight against Iran? That story starts in the Cold War, and it is wilder than you think. It is the 1960s. The Cold War is at its peak. America's frontline nuclear bomber is the B-52 Stratofortress. Massive, long-range, terrifying. But there is one problem. The B-52 was slow. And in the nuclear age, slow meant dead. Soviet surface-to-air missiles were improving every year. So American planners had an idea. What if instead of flying high, you flew low, below radar, supersonic, at tree top level, before the Soviets could even react? The aircraft was called the B-1A. Top speed, Mach 2.2, more than twice the speed of sound. It was supposed to replace the B-52 and carry America's nuclear deterrent into the next generation. On paper, this bomber looked completely unstoppable. The Soviets should have been terrified, but something far more dangerous than Soviet missiles was coming for it. The year is 1977. Jimmy Carter is the new president, and Carter has a very different idea of how to win the Cold War. His priority? Arms reduction treaties with the Soviet Union, not new nuclear bombers. The B-1A program had already cost $2 billion in development. Each aircraft would run to $100 million. Carter looked at that number, looked at the arms talks, and made a calculation. It was not shot down by Soviet missiles. It was not beaten in a flight test. The B-1A was killed by a phone call to the Pentagon. The most dangerous enemy of the B-1 was an American budget meeting. Fun fact, Carter canceled the B-1A in June 1977. $2 billion spent. 4 prototype aircraft mothballed. Thousands of engineers let go. The B-52, the old, slow bomber the B-1 was meant to replace, would keep flying. In today's money, that cancellation threw away nearly $10 billion. Can politics be more dangerous to a weapons program than the actual enemy it was built to fight? For the B-1, the answer was yes. And that, most people assumed, was the end of the story. But just when everyone wrote off the B-1 for good, a new president walked into the White House. And everything changed. Ronald Reagan became president in 1981 with one mission: rebuild American military power. One of his first moves? Revive the B-1, but redesigned from the ground up. The new aircraft was called the B-1B Lancer, built by Rockwell International, the same company that built NASA's Space Shuttle orbiter. The B-1B made deliberate changes from the original. Top speed was reduced from Mach 2.2 down to Mach 1.25, because that trade-off allowed a major reduction in radar cross-section. Less visible on radar was worth more than the extra speed. The mission also expanded from purely nuclear to conventional weapons as well. And the payload? This is where it gets surprising. Fun fact, the B-1B Lancer can carry more bombs than a B-52. Yes, the aircraft designed to replace the B-52 actually out-carries it. The B-1B has 3 internal weapons bays and holds up to 75,000 pounds of ordnance. The B-52 carries around 70,000 pounds. The B-1B entered service in 1986. Total program cost $28 billion for 100 aircraft, roughly $280 million per plane at the time, or about $750 million each in today's money. America didn't just revive a canceled bomber, it redesigned its entire purpose and created something more dangerous and more versatile than the original ever was. So what actually made the B-1B exceptional? 3 things set it apart from anything else in the American fleet. First, speed. Mach 1.25 supersonic dash. When inbound on a target, the B-1B accelerates hard in the final phase. Enemy air defenses have less time to respond, intercept windows shrink, the aircraft arrives before the reaction can complete. Second, low-level penetration. The B-1B was built to fly at a few hundred feet above the ground at high speed, below radar coverage, masked by terrain, fast enough to be nearly impossible to intercept at close range. This remains one of the rarest capabilities in military aviation. Third, payload. 75,000 pounds. 3 internal bays. Guided bombs, cruise missiles, anti-ship missiles, even hypersonic weapons in future configurations. It is not just a bomber, it is a flying arsenal. This bomber does not sneak slowly, it does not rely on invisibility, it runs straight through danger, fast, low, and absolutely loaded. Is raw speed and massive firepower better than stealth and invisibility? That question, speed versus stealth, defines every debate about the B-1B, and it will eventually define its retirement too. The B-1B was designed to sprint through Soviet air defenses, but the Cold War ended before it was ever used as designed. So by the mid-1990s, the Air Force stripped out all the nuclear weapons and converted the fleet to conventional strike only, permanently. And that is when the B-1B found its true calling. In Afghanistan after 2001, the B-1B became a legend. Not because of its speed, because of something nobody expected. In Iraq, the same story. Thousands of precision-guided JDAM bombs dropped. Time-sensitive strikes on high-value targets. Close air support for troops in contact. The aircraft designed to sprint at Mach 1.25 through Soviet radar had reinvented itself as a patient, heavy-hitting guardian angel for ground troops. That is not a failure of design. That is adaptability. But if it worked so well in combat, why is it being retired again? And why is it parked in England right now? This is not history. This is happening right now. In 2026, the United States and Iran are locked in a military confrontation. American forces have been conducting strikes under Operation Epic Fury, targeting Iranian missile sites, launch infrastructure, and command centers that threaten American allies across the Middle East. And the aircraft doing some of the heaviest striking, the B-1B Lancer, up to 8 of them parked at RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire, England. British authorities authorized the US to use the base for what they described as specific defensive operations to degrade Iranian missile capability and prevent Iranian strikes. Let that land. The bomber that was canceled in 1977. The bomber some people call obsolete. That bomber is currently flying combat missions deep inside Iran from English soil. Why England? Geography. RAF Fairford shortens the distance. Aircraft can fly a strike mission, return, rearm, refuel, and launch again faster. It also sends a signal: American operations have European staging. A canceled bomber, brought back in the 1980s, is flying the hardest missions of 2026. But this operational reality does not mean the aircraft has no problems. Because it does. Big ones. The B-1B is one of the most maintenance-intensive aircraft in the entire U.S. Air Force. And that is saying something in a fleet that includes the B-2 Spirit and the F-22 Raptor. Here is the core problem. Low-altitude supersonic flight, the B-1B's defining capability, subjects the airframe to enormous stress every single time it flies. The variable sweep wings flex and strain. The fuselage absorbs vibration that accumulates over decades. Speed comes at a price. That price is 60 maintenance hours for every single flight hour. For every hour in the air, 60 hours of work on the ground, at a cost of tens of thousands of dollars per flight hour. The B-1Bs were built in the 1980s with an expected service life of around 8,000 to 10,000 flight hours. Many aircraft have now significantly exceeded that because the aircraft was so useful in Afghanistan and Iraq, it was flown far harder than anyone planned. How long can a fast bomber stay fast? How many times can you send an aircraft to war before the airframe simply cannot take any more? And this is where the story turns dark. Because the B-1B's greatest enemy was never Soviet missiles or Iranian air defenses. Its greatest enemy is time. The answer to the B-1B's problems is the B-21 Raider. But to understand why, you need to understand what came before it and changed everything. The B-2 Spirit. The B-2 entered service in 1997 and asked a completely different question. The B-1B says, "I will fly fast and outrun anything that tries to kill me." The B-2 says, "You cannot kill what you cannot see." Fun fact, the B-2 Spirit has a radar cross-section roughly equivalent to a large bird, or in some measurements, a golf ball. A 172-foot wingspan aircraft that is nearly invisible on radar. The B-1B, despite having some stealth reduction over the original B-1A, is still detectable. The B-2 essentially vanishes. The B-2 is slower subsonic around Mach 0.8. No supersonic dash, no dramatic low-level runs. Instead, it flies high, slow, and completely undetectable. Enemy missiles cannot target what radar cannot find. Cost? $2.1 billion per aircraft. Not a typo, the philosophy one. And now the B-21 Raider, entering service now, will replace both the B-1B and eventually the B-2. Same stealth principle, but smaller, cheaper to operate, and built with modern 21st century technology. Expected cost around $550 million per aircraft, at least 100 planned. America chose invisibility over raw power. And the B-1B, with all its speed, all its combat history, is caught between two stealth generations, with nowhere left to go. So, what is the final verdict on this extraordinary, troubled, remarkable aircraft? Here is the honest truth about the B-1B Lancer. It was not a failure. Not even close. It was designed for a Cold War that ended before it was ever used as designed. It was then converted for a conventional role it was never originally built for. In that conventional role, it became one of the most requested, most trusted aircraft in the American military for 2 decades of combat in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it is flying combat missions in 2026 against Iran from English soil. But the other side of the verdict is real too. The B-1B's low-level supersonic penetration capability, its defining feature, was almost never used in actual combat. The wars it fought needed endurance and precision, not Mach 1.25 dashes through radar gaps. Its maintenance burden has grown beyond what the Air Force can sustain indefinitely. And stealth has fundamentally changed what a bomber needs to be. The B-1B didn't lose a war. It didn't get shot down. It simply lost relevance, not because it failed, but because the world moved towards stealth and the B-1B could not follow. But irrelevance and failure are not the same thing. The Bone earned every flight hour it ever flew. From Afghanistan to Iraq to Iran, it delivered when it mattered. In modern warfare, would you rather be fast and powerful or completely invisible? The B-1B answered that question one way. The B-2 and B-21 answered it another. History will judge which approach was right or whether you need both, and the answer changes depending on the war. The B-1B was not a mistake. It was a machine built for one world that survived long enough to fight in a completely different one. In the history of military aviation, that is actually extraordinary. History remembers winners. The B-2 Spirit, invisible, unstoppable, gets the headlines. The B-21 Raider gets the future. The poster on the wall goes to the stealth aircraft. But sometimes the most interesting aircraft are the ones that were canceled before they could prove themselves, brought back by a different leader with a different vision, redesigned for a world that had already moved on, and then used for decades in ways nobody planned. Canceled in 1977, revived in 1981. First combat in 1998, the backbone of close air support in Afghanistan. Still flying strikes in 2026. 40 years, multiple reinventions. One remarkable story. The Bone didn't get a happy ending, but it earned every single flight hour it ever flew. Do you think the B-1B deserved a longer life, or was its time already over the moment stealth took over? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every one. If this video hit right, like and subscribe to Elevon. We cover military aviation, aerospace history, and the stories behind the machines that shaped the world. See you in the next one.